A Sanctuary broadcast.
Good morning, good day, good everything, kind people of the internet. I hope you're all having a fantastic day today, and I hope that this message receives you well from myself and the Roving Bear. Say hi, Roving Bear.
Hi, Roving Bear.
I knew that was about to happen, but I lowered myself to it. Now, we've got a few things we're going to talk about. As you can see from the headline of today is Episode 3, the Xbox Chronofails. So you can guess with where we are going to be starting with the Chronofails, having some news recently broken by Xbox that they would be changing some pricing. Now, I will hand over to Bear at this point if you remember anything about this.
So, it was either late on Thursday or early on Friday. Xbox basically came out and said that the Xbox Live Gold, not to be confused with Game Pass, Live Gold, if anyone doesn't know, is the basic service that enables you to go and play online and get free games each month, was going to be massively hiked up in price. Now, Xbox's reasoning for this was officially there hasn't been a price rise for that for over 6 years, and as such, it was well overdue, given that, Microsoft are also going through the same economic crisis that we're all going through. Now, unofficially, the speculation is that Xbox were making the decision because rather than just phase out the Live Gold service, they wanted to kind of encourage people to jump to Game Pass, which, on the face of it, is significantly better value for what you're getting than the live service. I mean, let's be honest. It is better value for it. But not everyone can afford it. So putting up the prices so it'd be like 11 quid a month when Game Pass is 15 quid a month, would encourage you to move over to Game Pass. But if you didn't have that money, then it seemed a bit of a slap in the face. So there was a big outcry in the UK anyway, in the US last night, and Xbox came to the decision late on Friday, early on Saturday, that they were going to retract that decision, and they were going to kind of wheel back to the original pricing and learn from what they had heard from their audience. Now,
Go on.
I mean, for me personally, I think it's a great example of a company that has made a mistake, because companies are run by humans, therefore they are liable to make mistakes. And nobody, I think, slams a company for making that mistake if it realizes it's a mistake and it wheels back from it. But do I think this is the end of it? Probably not. I think we're going to reach a point when Xbox will probably have to phase it out for real, because it's obvious what they wanted to do for anyone who was looking. They want people on the Game Pass.
Exactly. The point is we want people onto one model. One group. It's the reason why their console's based how it's based. It's the reason why they have the option to buy a console using credit, but which gives you Game Pass for a period of time.
And it's the reason why when you get achievement scores once a year, you'll be able to transform any achievement score you get into credit to buy a game as well, which you can get a further discount on the Game Pass, which makes it even more easier to get a game.
Their marketing strategy is great if they're honest. Be honest with your customer. We want, in 12 months' time, we will be getting rid of this service.
Exactly.
Do it with 12 months. So, if you like, from this date, you will no longer be able to buy a 12-month pass. We will be phasing this out in 12 months. After this 12 months after this period is up, everything will go over to Game Pass. Game Pass will be your internet service that you pay for, but you will get free games with that. I think that would be quite a good way to do it. Don't try to force people immediately like they've done here. Taking a sledgehammer to someone never goes well. You know, if you're gonna just sledgehammer something through, it's never gonna work well. You've got to coax people with like trails of breadcrumbs in a manner of speaking. However, I don't think they do that very well. We've got to remember
I don't think
isn't the first
many
time
in the game industry do.
You got to remember this isn't the first time Xbox have had to roll back very swiftly on things that they announce. We're not going to let you lend games to people. That was rolled back very quickly. So Xbox have a problem, in my opinion, and I've mentioned this when they was releasing the console, of releasing anything because they just don't have the brains behind it. I don't understand why.
I feel that that's maybe a little unfair on them. I think my countering to that would say I think Xbox's problem is they don't fully understand their market audience. But, and I will give them credit for this, like I said before, when you compare it to Nintendo and in fact Sony, when Sony bumped up the price of PlayStation Plus, which was one of the reasons that persuaded me to leave eventually, they do actually, they listen, and if they catch that their audience is that pissed off, they will actually make a decision. They will change back to what they were before. They listen. Like, Nintendo have had so much outpouring of anger in the last year through a lot of their actions. And the fact that they never once kind of reeled back surprised me. Because Nintendo, let's be honest, out of the big three game companies, Nintendo rely on goodwill more than the other two.
They do, because they're smaller and they've got less of a base of people who are strictly that for them. I would also say Sony's bad at it, and I'd say Nintendo's bad at it. They just don't seem to they just don't have that I understand my audience. When I start thinking about people in business who really understood their audience, Steve Jobs. He understood his audience perfectly. It was like he was a complete expert at knowing what people who wanted an Apple product wanted. He knew what to bring in. He knew how to do it. He knew how to announce it. He was the king at doing it.
The man is a business genius, and quite frankly, if anyone here, like me, when I was studying business, wants to kind of get a better grasp of how to succeed, just read anything he's ever written. Just look at anything he's ever done. Quite frankly, he just has that method of delivery, and it's just perfect. And quite frankly, you can learn a lot from the guy.
I think one element that I take from, and I think is quite interesting, AEW Games, on their announcement thing, they all came out wearing blue jeans, a black like jumpery thing, and was like, yes, this is how Steve Jobs did it, right? They played on the fact that everybody knows Steve Jobs was the expert at it. And I really like that touch.
That said, there is one other man who I feel had that. Like, I don't think he always had it, and I don't think Steve Jobs always had it either. But by the end of his career, I feel that Reggie Fils-Aimé sort of had the Steve Jobs delivery down to a T. Like, when the Switch was coming out, and it was the early days of the Switch, Reggie Fils-Aimé was in charge of Nintendo of America, and it was his job to reveal these products to the Western audience. Right, bear in mind how much the Wii U bombed. The guy just, honestly, I think a lot of that Switch success is down to him, because he delivered on the sales pitches perfectly. Like, even I kind of looked at it at first and went, it's an interesting concept, but it seems a bit gimmicky, and he was there kind of going, it's not a gimmick, this is why it's not a gimmick, look at this, you need this in your lives. And he presented that case perfectly. So for me, Steve Jobs, Reggie Fils-Aimé, these kind of guys are what modern day game kind of industry experts could do with learning from.
What doesn't help them, obviously, is the growth of social media. Social media now, if you make a small error of judgment, it amplifies it. So, for example, some of the
social media will amplify anything both positive and negative, though. I mean, the
Yes.
problem with social media is effectively what tabloids were in the 90s. It just takes something small and just like insignificant and completely can sensationalize that in a second. Like, do you remember Xbox did a launch for the Halo trailer a few months ago?
I didn't see the actual launch thing, but I know.
But you saw the picture of the grunt, because that was picked up on as a very small detail, and that has definitely been we've been reminded of that regularly.
You just got to like look at YouTube, and there's so many YouTubers out there who literally go through trailers, see just like mini pixel by mini pixel, and pick out anything and be like, "Oh, that's wrong," like, or that's what's gonna happen, and it's just like you can't give anything away. If you don't want it given away, you can't have it anywhere near a trailer or anything. You can't have it near anything.
Exactly. I suppose nowadays people have a lot more time to look at these things now that we're all stuck in isolation and lockdowns and whatnot. But no, you're right. Still, you know.
So we've gone
In
for
a
a
way,
negative here. So should we flip this upside down and give it a moment, and we'll go across to what I'm thinking you're going to call a positive here?
I mean, I'm assuming this is the part where I get to bang on about a game that I've been replaying a lot of recently.
Yes, the one with all the creepy crawlies in it.
The game that really was horror game of the year. Grounded. Yeah, honestly, I remember seeing the launch of Grounded in, I think it was September, when they put the trailer out and announced it was coming pretty soon. She followed shortly after. And I remember playing it for the first time and thinking, well, I saw it on the trailer and thought, this is a great concept. I played it and thought, yeah, this is really good. But, like, it's got that kind of Subnautica and Phasmophobia feeling of, it's in early development, so there's still, like, you can see the construction work going on, so to speak. But this last couple of weeks, I managed to finally play through and get past the Pond update, which was the biggest update that they've had since the game came out. For anyone who doesn't know, the game is made up of a number of biomes. Some are harder than others. Some, if you don't wish to be mentally scarred for life, such as the berry tree, you should probably avoid if you don't like spiders. Unfortunately for me, Sophie Bubbles, who isn't here today, didn't tell me that fact, but I digress. The Pond, on the other hand, was like they effectively built a whole world within the game. And quite frankly, I'd say it was a success. The new creatures they've added, the new materials, they all fit in perfectly. For those of you like me who, I won't say necessarily arachnophobic, but don't like giant spiders, if you think you're going in the pond to escape them, nah. And there's now more to the backstory, and they really developed the backstory. So we all know about the scientists involved in the project, and we all know a little bit about what they were hoping to achieve. But you learn a bit more about that presentation when they finally presented it and what happened, or what didn't happen, I should say, which I'm assuming the next update is going to really elaborate further on that, from how the scientists, success story kind of failed and the descent from there into his own garden, so to speak, for testing and stuff. But yeah, the guys who make the game are a bit like Phasmophobia's creators as well, in the sense that if you look on social media, they do seem to have picked up on their audience habits. And I fear now for this new update, which, for anyone who doesn't know, the new update is going to involve a lot more flying creatures, a lot more aerial threats. And this is largely because of a number of fans who told the Grounded team that their number one base and safest place to build a base is on top of the baseball at the very beginning. So to those guys,
safe spot.
It is. And to those guys, I say, God damn you, why did you tell them this? They didn't need to know. Now there's nowhere safe. But then, I guess that's the joy of a survival game. if you know there's somewhere safe, then you're going to go there every time. If you don't know it's safe, or you don't know where's safe, you're going to explore.
There was an island on the forest which me and my friends thought was perfectly safe, and I was the biggest coward in the world. When I went out and explored in the forest, I just ran around like an idiot, running past things because I didn't want to get hurt. I also managed to complete the game much faster than my friends and get to the end game much faster than my friends because I accidentally found everything I needed by running away. Just constantly running. It was like an episode of Doctor Who. I digress, but we all thought this island was perfectly safe. Now, unfortunately for me, I didn't realise there is something that can spawn on the... You occasionally got 1 or 2 spawns on the island, but you didn't get that many, and they weren't that hard. I didn't realise this, but I was stood there on the island, and I heard a noise. And I was stood in our house. And then suddenly, this creature just smashes through the house. And all you hear me is scream and run out the house and to the other end of the island, jump onto our boat, and like go away as fast as possible, basically. Again, running away, because that's what I do. And then we had to like look up what it was, and I think it's called something like the worm or something like that, and it just like floats in the sky and like has multiple different ways it looks. Yeah, it hunted me down for being a coward. So they obviously had a set in plan that you couldn't be a coward for the whole game.
Well, I get the impression that Grounded has something similar. Certainly, when me and Soph were playing on our game, we had this problem where if you stayed at base camp for longer than half an in-game day, you'd get a visit from a wolf spider. But because we had literally, like, just started the game, we were still building the base, which meant that it was just there permanently. And anyone who plays the game knows, early game, wolf spiders are your worst enemy. They are literally insta-kills that are going to get you every time. That said, on stream, I was really delighted that we managed to get 2 complete newbies to the game to actually help him kill not only 1, but 2 wolf spiders. And by the end, they started on the 3rd, and we were just like, yeah, we'll let you guys deal with it. They were getting a bit too cocky, you know?
Exactly.
But that's the thing about a survival game, you know. You kill one of the big bads, you get cocky, you get confident, and then it only takes one bad one, and then you're back to where you were.
Especially if your big bad is Thomas the Tank Engine chasing you around a mansion because... chasing you around a city because you're playing Resident Evil.
I mean, that is glorious. That entire mod is glorious, and I need to see that on stream at some point. But I should say as well about it, there was something worse in Grounded. And one of the things that we're quite curious as to why they took it out and whether they're going to bring it back. Now, I've already mentioned about the berry tree. Well, the berry tree is near the hedge, and the hedge had something completely and utterly terrifying for me. Basically, they put in a spider twice the size of a wolf spider to be the boss, called the hedge broodmother, and that's since disappeared and we don't know why. But just to kind of add on to the updates, we suspect this is going to come back. We know that they're bringing in mosquitoes. We know, and I'm sorry to say it because I know Soph is terrified of them, they're bringing in bees and wasps. We know they're going to bring in an ant queen. So, at this stage, we're just curious to see what more they do. But I think what they've done with the game already is fantastic. I think I'd really love if they'd expand it further and maybe allow us inside the shed or something.
That's an interesting thing. How do we think that they're going to play this storyline out? Because obviously, the storyline's got to go somewhere, and I'm guessing it's going to be a speedrunning game. I'm guessing there'll be a lot of speedrunning in this game when it's actually finished. I don't think it will be a long game.
I think you're probably right, but you know, I'd like them to do more building opportunities and things for us to build with. I'd like something that will defend us from aerial threats. If you're going to include aerial threats, like right now they've included palisade walls to defend you from ground threats, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you're going to add aerial threats, you've got to add something in to combat that as well, and make it as equally difficult to obtain and build. I would love them to put in the option that you can find creatures to ride.
Like a hedge broodmother.
Maybe not that. Like, for example, let's say you've got an ant. You can, like, almost pet and turn one into a rideable, so you'd have it like a horse kind of style thing. I'd love for... I don't know, to be honest, there's so many things I'd love to see in the game. There's a lot I would love to see them do, and I think the beauty of this game is that it's got... And I know this is ironic because we're talking about ants and spiders. You know, I think it's definitely got legs in it.
Oh my! It would be worse if we was talking about the forest and talking about legs, because I remember that creature on the forest, which absolutely.
I would love to know one other thing now. I get the impression from the game there is, and I don't. Can I call it a spoiler? If it's a very minor detail in something that isn't really in a mission, but you just do anyway.
Go on.
If anyone goes into the anthill, and quick clue for people, if you do want to go in the anthill but you don't know how, kill ants, turn it into ant armor, and then they'll leave you alone. Once you're in the anthill, you'll notice there's a lot of skeletons in there that are human skeletons, but the same size as us. And as far as I can see, the storyline hasn't touched on why that is. You know? I would like to see them touch upon that.
That would be quite interesting to see how they do touch on that, to be fair. Because there's obviously plans to touch on it at some point with like failed previous experiments. Maybe the key.
Mm-hmm.
But we talk about failed previous experiments. Now, we all know that of a video game that's coming out very soon that it's basically created by a failed experiment on creating something that helps revive dead cells. Obviously, Resident Evil: The Village is coming out. Now, you watched the trailer yesterday?
I did. I actually watched the extended gameplay version as well.
Interesting. What? We'll start off with the trailer itself before we go into the thing. Can I just say at the start of the trailer, the thing is absolutely freaky. The voice they use is absolutely freaky.
Yes.
Not.
Yes, it is.
Now, there's a few points I wrote down when I was like going through everything. It's like when's it based? Because the place it's in seems really old. Is it like an old mansion, so that someone's still living like a regal old mansion, or is it based not in the 2020s, or is it based a little bit further back? That interests me because the whole Resident Evil timeline thing. And also there's something, but I'll go on to that in a little while. But what was your opinions of it? Your extended versions.
Of the storyline, so far, I'm interested. I'm particularly interested, firstly, in why every single villainous female Capcom ever makes has to be really sexualized, but moving on from that, I did like the fact that they appear almost vampiric in certain respects. I'm curious to see how that develops. I think that will make for an interesting boss fight if they're turning into a swarm of flies and locusts and things, and then they just re-emerge again somewhere else. Simple mechanics, I know, but it does sound and look quite appealing. I think the combat mechanics, from what I could see, I like how they've gone even more realistic. and you can now use your gun to block attacks. But I would be interested to see if there is somebody who, when you block, because in the game, the gameplay kind of trailer they showed shows you the gun, you holding both hands on the gun and like using it to block like a zombie attack. I'd be interested to see if there is an attack that will hit you lower down, you know?
Low blow. Oof.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, if I did that to you when you were trying to attack me, you'd go for a low blow, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Exactly.
The interesting thing is, one of my notes has got vampires right next to it.
That's what I thought as well about the 3 women that were with the kind of big boss, if I could call her that.
I'm going to roll back in time a few years now. So I'm rolling back till Resident Evil 4 was being made. This was many years ago. Or shall we say Devil May Cry was being made. Resident Evil 4 was originally being made. And you may have played the original version of Resident Evil 4 of what they first made for it because it got made to Devil May Cry. They, at the time, said it's going to be originally made. Devil May Cry was originally going to be made into Resident Evil 4, but it didn't fit the franchise. Roll forward all these years, I think that's Devil May Cry style. They're using. I definitely think it's vampires. I definitely feel they're going along the Devil May Cry system and style. Does this mean Devil May Cry won't have many more updates or new games? Probably. However, very interesting to see the change in their opinions on Resident Evil 4 to Resident Evil 8.
For me, I like the fact that the last couple of Resident Evils have felt closer to Resident Evil 4 than they did to Resident Evil 6 or even 5. Like, I enjoyed 5 as a co-op game, but it didn't really feel like a horror game. It just felt like a shooting zombie game, you know? Just a shooter. Same for 6. 6 was like a terrible arcade version. 7, I've yet to properly play through it, but from what I have played, I'm liking the fact they've gone back to their roots.
They really have, and that's what I really like the fact they've gone back to. It feels a horror game again now. Resident Evil 1 felt like a horror game.
That said,
Resident Evil 3, but then they went away from that. But
said, you know, I am interested to see what they're planning to do with this vampire approach. I mean, the T-virus we know created zombies. Is there something else that's going to create vampires? Is it a vampiric strain or something in the blood that reacts to the T-virus? There's a lot of could-bes in the storyline I'm curious to find out. The layout and the location looks absolutely stunning. The gameplay, as I say, looked promising, and until I get my hands on the trailer on the Xbox, because we don't have that, PlayStation have the first kind of demo to play through. Once I get my hands on that, I'll be curious to see how that plays. But I do like the fact they're going for the more horror vibe. That said, if you were to ask me what horror game would I most want to play right now, I'd honestly tell you it would be Fatal Frame.
now I'm going to throw something in here because I think it's kind of interesting because we've mentioned Grounded and we've mentioned Resident Evil Village. Is it easier to make a first-person game scarier? Think about the games we're talking about. Do you find them more scary because they're first person? Whereas if there was third person, it would be different.
That is a good question. But not necessarily. Fatal Frame was third person where you'd see your character. And I think it is challenging to make it scary, but it's not impossible. Fatal Frame's entire method for doing that was through a combination of set pieces involving, things happening around you in the environment and the sound engineering which was designed to be intentionally disturbing. It was designed to put you on edge. That said, the other thing they did very well with the sound in Fatal Frame games, which was third person again, just to reiterate that point, they knew when to use it and when not to use it. Because, fun story, silence can be as terrifying as distorted sound. Especially when you go from distorted sound to absolutely no sound at all. Now, Resident Evil has their own way of being scary at times. I felt with 5 and 6, a lot of what they tried to do was jump scare you, which is not scare. It's not a proper scare. It's not the same, you know?
I think a lot of games have got to that stage now where they think a scare is a scare, and it's just like, oh, we'll jump scare them. But as soon as you have like 1 or 2 jump scares, suddenly the jump scare becomes pointless.
The thing is, once you know it's there, you know it's there. It's not going to have the same effect. Whereas, you know, a game like Five Nights at Freddy's, you know what you're getting with that. You know it's a jump scare, and that was fine because the entire game was designed around the jump scare. Whereas Resident Evil is a game where you would be dotting them in, and there's no problem with having them, but you've got to use them sparingly and correctly. So I'm going to use a film example now, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Woman in Black?
No, I didn't.
Woman in Black used jump scares, but the thing is, it used them in a way where it built tension up before deploying them. The point of it was, you knew something was coming, you didn't know what, you didn't know how. Oh shit, you see it, it's coming towards you, it's coming very close, boom, something else happens and your entire line of sight diverts to somewhere else, you look back, it's gone. That was a genius use of jump scares.
The reason why I brought up the is it easier to make first person scary is because I wanted to have put this point across after that is, like we say, maybe it's just how you use them. It's how you use scare, it's how you use sound, it's how you use everything in and around it. But the move that I'm seeing at the moment is more things going towards first person. However, I think that's for a completely different reason than it being scary. I think it's to accommodate VR in the future.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's what's going on. I mean, to be fair, I understand the concept of what you're saying. First person is easier to make scary because first person is effectively, when you want it to be, a first person game is a lot easier to put on rails, if you know what I mean.
Yes. It's
You can
easy to
easily
have
make
glitches
your...
as well. You have
That's
a lot
good, yeah,
of glitches.
Let's say you open a door, it's easier then for the game developer to take control of the character from the player and make the character move somewhere in particular or do something that triggers a scare. When it's third person, it's not quite as straightforward, and you as the player have a wider range of sight.
Yeah.
Which is why I always commended Project Zero and how they did it themselves, because they always played it in such a way where, even though you had that sight, it would still scare you and it would still build up that tension.
And on a final note, one final question, very quick question. Because we talked about Xbox, Grounded, and Resident Evil obviously having the bigger of these audiences when it comes to gaming. But do you think smaller game devs, very quickly, watch Twitch and YouTube quite a bit to pick up their viewers' habits? So comparing Resident Evil Village and comparing Grounded.
I might need a bit more to go on with that. Are you asking me, do smaller game developers watch how their audience plays their games?
Yes.
Yes. Grounded is an example of that. Grounded has the new aerial threat coming very soon because their developers realised quite swiftly if people build high, which they do, things can't get to them. Now, that being said, it would honestly scare me a lot more if they then decided to turn around and make spiders climb on things, which they do in real life. Phasmophobia. Did you know that the Phasmophobia ghosts couldn't actually detect your voice?
I didn't know
Fun
that.
fact, the developers didn't realise that that's what people assumed, so the developers have now put that in.
Great, that's nice of them.
Yeah.
The
So there's been
reason
a lot
why I also bring this up is because I know some game developers who did 7 Days to Die, and they go round and they openly are 7 Days to Die developers, and they talk about 7 Days to Die. They go into people's streams, they talk about what they're doing, they talk to the streamer about stuff, they talk to their audience about stuff, and they are openly canvassing ideas, which I thought was amazing as an idea.
I think that's brilliant. It's a bit like how Phasmophobia has that whole Trello board, and I think there is an element of the Trello board where people put ideas in. It's the same with Grounded. They have a wiki fandom page where people put their ideas in and they are taking them on board. Ultimately, I think that's the way gaming and most things should go. You've got an audience. You build an audience. And if you're building this audience through an early release, you'd be foolish not to listen to them, because they know what they want. Now, granted, not every idea is genius, not every idea is workable, but you will always find something in there.
I think this is a roundabout time to say, to wrap this up, thank you very much for listening / watching. I hope you all have a fantastic day. And Bear, is there anything you'd like to add about any of these topics that we spoke about?
If Tecmo is by any chance listening, please just bring us out a HD version or collection of the Fatal Frame games. Quite honestly, you would sell really well, because there is no horror game like it on the market right now. And thank you guys for listening and watching, and hashtag bring back Fatal Frame.
So, things we learnt today. Xbox rollback. Grounded development team are pretty in touch with their audience. And Capcom like to over-sexualise. And on that bombshell, good night.
Hey, I'm the Roving Bear. Come and check out my content over on Twitch.
www.twitch.tv/therovingbear. I'm Barrett87, it's www.twitch.tv/Barrett87, and all my other links are found on there too. That is www.twitch.tv/Barrett87, BARECH87.
Beep, beep. You've been listening to a Sanctuary broadcast. We will now resume regular programming.